Not all passages contain arguments. Because logic deals with arguments, it is important to be able to distinguish passages that contain arguments from those that do not. In general, a passage contains an argument if it claims to prove something. If it does not do so, it does not contain an argument. Two conditions must be fulfilled for a passage to claim to prove something. 1. At least one of the statements must claim to present evidence or reasons. And 2, there must be a claim that the alleged evidence supports or implies something. That is, a claim that something follows from the alleged evidence or reasons. As we have seen, the statements that claim to present the evidence or reasons are the premises, and the statement that the evidence is claimed to support or imply is the conclusion. It is not necessary that the premises present actual evidence or true reasons, nor that the premises actually support the conclusion. But at least the premises must claim to present evidence or reasons, and there must be a claim that the evidence or reasons support or imply something. The first condition expresses a factual claim, and deciding whether it is fulfilled often falls outside of the domain of logic. Thus, most of our attention will be concentrated on whether the second condition is fulfilled. This second condition expresses what is called an inferential claim. The inferential claim is simply the claim that the passage expresses a certain kind of reasoning process, that something supports or implies something, or that something follows from something. Also, you should recognize that this claim is not equitable with the intentions of the arguer. Intentions are subjective, and as such are usually not accessible to the evaluator. Rather, the inferential claim is an objective feature of an argument grounded in its language or structure. An inferential claim can be either explicit or implicit. An explicit inferential claim is usually asserted by premise or conclusion indicator words. Remember those that we had on the list: thus, since, because, hence, therefore, and so on. So here's an example. Mad cow disease is spread by feeding parts of infected animals to cows, and this practice has yet to be completely eradicated. Thus, mad cow disease continues to pose a threat to people who eat beef. The word thus expresses the claim that something is being inferred, and so the passage is an argument. An implicit inferential claim exists if there is an inferential relationship between the statements in a passage, but the passage contains no indicator words. So just like the example here, the genetic modification of food is risky. Genetic engineering can introduce unintended changes into the DNA of the food-producing organism, and these changes can be toxic to the consumer. The inferential relationship between the first statement and the other two constitutes an implicit claim that evidence supports something, so we are justified in calling the passage an argument. The first statement is the conclusion, and the other two are the premises. In deciding whether there is a claim that evidence supports or implies something, keep an eye out for indicator words and the presence of an inferential relationship between the statements. In connection with these points, however, there is a word of caution. First, the mere occurrence of an indicator word by no means guarantees the presence of an argument. For example, consider the following passages. Since Edison invented the phonograph, there have been many technological developments. Since Edison invented the phonograph, he deserves credit for a major technological development. In the first passage, the word since is used in a temporal sense. It relates to time, not logic. Thus, the first passage is not an argument. In the second passage, sense is used in a logical sense, and so the passage is an argument. The second cautionary point is that it's not always easy to detect the occurrence of an inferential relationship between the statements in a passage, and one may have to review a passage several times before making a decision. In reaching such a decision, one may find it helpful to mentally insert the word therefore before the various statements to see whether it makes sense to interpret one of them as following from the others. Even with this mental aid, however, the decision whether a passage contains an inferential relationship, as well as the decision about indicator words, often involves a heavy dose of interpretation. As a result, not everyone will agree about every passage. Sometimes the only answer possible is a conditional one. If this passage contains an argument, then these are the premises, and that is the conclusion. To assist in distinguishing passages that contain arguments from those that do not, let us investigate some typical kinds of non-arguments. These include simple, non-inferential passages, expository passages, illustrations, explanations, and conditional statements. Feel free to go ahead and pause the video at this point if you're working on doing the study guide questions, Section 5, questions 1 through 4. Simple non-inferential passages are unproblematic passages that lack a claim that anything is being proved. Such passages contain statements that could be premises or conclusions or both, but what is missing is a claim that any potential premise supports a conclusion or that any potential conclusion is supported by premises. Passages of this sort include warnings, pieces of advice, statements or belief or opinion, loosely associated statements, and reports. The first one is warning, a form of expression that is extended to put someone on guard against a dangerous or detrimental situation. So let's look at the example. Watch out that you don't slip on the ice. If no evidence is given to prove that such statements are true, then there is no argument. A piece of advice is a form of expression that makes a recommendation about some future decision or course of content. Let's look at the example. You should keep a few things in mind before buying a used car. Test drive the car at varying speeds and conditions. Examine the oil in the crankcase. Ask to see service records and, if possible, have the engine and powertrain checked by a mechanic. As with warnings, there is no evidence that is intended to prove anything, then there is no argument. A statement of belief or opinion is an expression about what someone happens to believe or think about something. We believe that our company must develop and produce outstanding products that will perform a great service or fulfill a need for our consumers. We believe business must be run at an adequate profit and that the services, the products we offer must be better than those offered by competitors. Because neither of these authors make any claim that his or her belief or opinion is supported by evidence or that it supports some conclusion, there is no argument. Loosely associated statements may be about the same general subject, but they lack a claim that one of them is proved by the others. Water is wet. Swimming pools are filled with water. Many colleges and universities have collegiate water sports. Water is fun to play in. Because there is no claim that any of these statements provide evidence or reasons for believing another, there is no argument. A report consists of a group of statements that convey information about some topic or event. Here's an example. Witnesses say they heard a loud crack before the balcony gave way at a popular night spot, dropping dozens of screaming people 14 feet. At least 80 people were injured at the Diamond Horse Show Casino when they fell onto broken glass and splintered wood. Investigators are waiting for an engineer's report on the deck's occupancy load. Again, because the reporter makes no claim that these statements imply anything, there is no argument. One must be careful, though, with reports about arguments. Let's look at this example about the Air Force. The Air Force faces a serious shortage of experienced pilots in the years ahead. Because repeated overseas tours and the allure of high-paying jobs with commercial airlines are winning out over lucrative bonuses to stay in the service, says prominent Air Force official. Properly speaking, this passage is not an argument. Because the author of the passage does not claim that anything is supported by evidence, rather, the author reports the claim by the Air Force official that something is supported by evidence. If such passages are interpreted as containing arguments, it must be made clear that the argument is not the author's, but one made by someone about whom the author is reporting. An expository passage is a kind of discourse that begins with a topic sentence followed by one or more sentences that develop the topic sentence. If the objective is not to prove the topic sentence but only to expand it or elaborate it, then there is no argument. Let's go ahead and take a look at an example. There is a stylized relation of artist to mass audience in the sports, especially in baseball. Each player develops a style of his own, the swagger as he steps to the plate, the unique windup a pitcher has, the clean swinging and hard driving hits, the precision, quickness, and grace of infield and outfield, the sense of surplus power behind whatever is done. The passage has a topic sentence that is stated first, and the remaining sentences merely develop and flesh out this topic sentence. This passage is not an argument, though, because it lacks an inferential claim. However, expository passages differ from simple non-inferential passages, such as warnings and pieces of advice, that in many of them can also be taken as arguments. If the purpose of the subsequent sentences in the passage is not only to flesh out the topic sentence, but also to prove it, then the passage is an argument. So let's look at this example. Skin and the mucous membrane lining the respiratory and digestive tracts serve as mechanical barriers to entry by microbes. Oil gland secretions contain chemicals that weaken or kill bacteria on skin. The respiratory tract is lined by cells that sweep mucus and trapped particles up into the throat, where they can be swallowed. The stomach has an acidic pH which inhibits the growth of many types of bacteria. In this passage, the topic sentence is stated first, and the purpose of the remaining sentences is not only to show how the skin and mucous membranes serve as barriers to microbes, but also to prove that they do this. Thus, the passage can be taken as both an expository passage and an argument. And here we can see where the conclusion is. So again, not only shows how, but proves. In deciding whether an expository passage should be interpreted as an argument, try to determine whether the purpose of the subsequent sentences in the passage is merely to develop the topic sentence or also to prove that it is true. In borderline cases, ask yourself whether the topic sentence makes a claim that everyone accepts or agrees with. If it does, the passage is probably an argument. In real-life situations, authors rarely try to prove something is true when everyone already accepts it. However, if the topic sentence makes a claim that many people do not accept or have never thought about, then the purpose of the remaining sentences may be both to prove the topic sentence is true as well as to develop it. If this be so, the passage is an argument. Finally, if even this procedure yields no definite answer, the only alternate may be to say that if the passage is taken as an argument, then the first statement is the conclusion and the others are premises. Let's go ahead and take a break. You can try out some more practices from concept exercises 1.2, sections 1 and 2. You should also be able to answer section 5 questions 5 through 7 if you are doing the study guide, or start defining some of these terms.